Welcome back to Practical Stoicism. I'm your host, Tanner Campbell, and if you'd like to get rid of ads, you can subscribe to the ad-free version of this podcast by visiting stoicism.supercast.com. Link in the show notes for that. It's just $6 a month, and it's a great way to support what I am doing here with Practical Stoicism. I'd like to remind you that you can ask questions to be answered on a future episode of Practical Stoicism by going to podinbox.com/stoicism. It's a cool way to hear your voice on the podcast and to get your questions answered in a way that benefits everyone, because other people may well have the same questions you do. There's also a link in the show notes for that. Today we're diving into meditation number 24 from Book 2, which reads as follows. Occupy yourself with few things, says the philosopher, if thou wouldest be tranquil. But consider if it would not be better to say, do what is necessary, and whatever the reason of the animal which is naturally social requires, and as it requires. For this brings not only the tranquility which comes from doing well, but also that which comes from doing few things. For the greatest part of what we say and do being unnecessary, if a person takes this away, they will have more leisure and less uneasiness. Accordingly, on every occasion, a person should ask themselves, is this one of the unnecessary things? And a person should take away not only unnecessary acts, but also unnecessary thoughts, for thus superfluous acts will not follow after. I didn't remember this one when I read it this morning, but geez, it is a good one. And as we approach the new year, when everyone is looking to make sweeping changes in the form of New Year's resolutions, it's a timely one as well. Philosophers tell us to occupy ourselves with few things, and that's probably because the fewer things we're occupied with, the easier it is to pay attention to the silence and find serenity, or here, tranquility, in the world. Instead of waking up in the morning, sitting down to eat your breakfast cereal and scrolling through your phone and checking your email the whole time, try just sitting down and eating your breakfast cereal. That's probably a less busy, less noisy, and less stressful experience, I bet. But if we focus simply on occupying ourselves with as little as possible, sure, we may find tranquility, but we're also becoming a bit hermit-like too, aren't we? If we decide only to concern ourselves with our jobs and reading our books, for example, maybe that's a calm and simple life, but is it a good one? Is it a truly human one? I think Marcus is suggesting that it isn't. He's suggesting, instead, that we simply do what is necessary, that we lean into what the Stoics believe is our human nature. If we do this, not only do we find ourselves occupied by just a few things, which will satisfy the philosophers, but we also find ourselves doing well in the world. And that doesn't mean that we're doing well like we're comfortable. It means we're doing well like we're doing virtuous things. For how could this not be the case if a human being's nature, as we've seen countless times in this podcast, is to help others, serve communities, love justice, and obtain wisdom? How could doing only necessary things not result in doing virtuous things? And while we're at it, why don't we make a habit of asking ourselves, now wait a minute, is this thing I'm doing right now necessary according to my nature? If not, then why am I doing it? And let's take it one step further. What am I thinking of right now? Is this a necessary thought? If not, let's stop having this thought. Let's stop obsessing over this thing. And let's think of something else, for as Marcus suggests in this meditation, if we stop participating in unnecessary thoughts, those thoughts cannot become unnecessary actions. Of course, in some cases, and with certain mental health considerations, it is not always possible to stop obsessing over certain thoughts. Some of us cannot control whether we express obsessive-compulsive behavior, for example. Some of us, like me, cannot out-stoic our ADHD. But Stoicism doesn't tell you that in order to be stoic, you must not have OCD or ADHD or any other sort of non-normative thing going on. Stoicism just tells us to lean into our nature. And while our shared human nature is all the same, it's probably true that our individual natures are all different. Take two zebras, for instance. Their nature is the same. they're both zebras. But if one of those zebras has lost a leg in a failed lioness attack, the expression of that nature will necessarily look different. But this is a minor thing, and not something that changes the fact that this zebra is a zebra. It's just a zebra who has to find different ways to do the same things other zebras do. It still runs, it still eats, it still drinks water, it still lives in the herd. It's not terribly different, just a little bit. It's still much more like other zebras than it is unlike other zebras. The same is true with me and my ADHD, and the same is true of you and your fill in the blank. Same with that person over there with OCD, or that lady over there with bipolar disorder, or that guy over there with depression, or the amputee, or the diabetic, or the celiac. Yes, it's true. Our human nature will come out in slightly different ways than what people call normative. But we're no less human. We've just got our individual things going on. And I've got news for you. The more science and medicine discover, the more it's looking like the idea of statistically normative isn't anything like what we've ever thought was, quote-unquote, normal. So we can all lean into our human nature because we're all human beings with the exact same nature. But just like when you tell two people to draw a pair of glasses, one will draw two drinking glasses, while the other will draw a pair of eyeglasses, we're all going to lean a little differently. Personal circumstances do matter, but in Stoicism, that doesn't change whether or not you're a Stoic. So today, try to do less. That's your homework. But not just less. Do less and do less of what's unnecessary. See how that feels. Only do the things you feel compelled to do as a human being. Only the things you feel a virtuous human being would do. And don't do anything else. See if you survive the day. See how when you do survive the day, how surprising that might be to you. Or, and I hope this is the case, how good it feels. Then tell me about it in the Discord community. Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode of Practical Stoicism. I appreciate you being here. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, just go ahead and hit follow or subscribe in whatever app you're currently using to listen. That way you'll find out every time a new episode drops, which is every day. And if you've got a minute and you're enjoying the show, consider leaving it a review wherever you can. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Practical Stoicism, and until next time, take care.